A wild weekend of college football in Week 12. I'm going to give you my 5 biggest takeaways. I talked about last week. I felt like this is a week where we could see a ton of top 25 teams go down. A bunch of top 25 teams get upset. We did see several, but we also had some really close calls. It was definitely an exciting weekend, and talked about in the videos last week, the pressure starting to build as we get to closer to the end of the season, the college football playoff. The rankings are out now. I mean, it's always like this. Now, I'm already kind of looking ahead to next week, and I think it's going to be a really quiet week in Week 13. But Week 12, I mean, we saw a lot of things happen. So we saw Clemson, Louisville. There was an upset. Louisville losing. That was the Friday night. That kind of kicked it off. We saw Navy upset South Florida. We saw Arizona upset Cincinnati. Of course, the big one was Oklahoma upsetting Alabama. This was a top 25 team that was actually an underdog, but Virginia upset Duke. And so those upsets happened, but it was more about the close calls too. I mean, man, we saw some really, really close calls. South Carolina, Texas A&M, and these were just like out of nowhere. South Carolina up 30-3 at halftime. They blow the lead, but still, I mean, that was so unexpected. It's still, I mean, what a comeback by Texas A&M. But yeah, you didn't see that coming. Northwestern, Michigan. This is one I kind of did see coming, but Michigan really, they almost lost that game. I mean, you miss the field goal at the end, you lose. So that one was a really close call for them. Georgia Tech had to come back to beat Boston College. That was another close call. Ole Miss had to come from behind to beat Florida. Florida led that game, I believe, in the second half, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, we did see some upsets, but we also saw just some close calls. And again, the pressure starting to build for these teams. I don't know if we'll see it next week, but rivalry weekend is going to be insane, and that's what we're going to get to with our first takeaway. Rivalry week in the SEC, yeah, it is going to be insane. You've got teams that could absolutely, realistically get upset. You've got nothing really decided. I believe I saw something that said no SEC team can clinch a spot in the SEC championship until rivalry week. So even next week, no one can clinch. Texas A&M absolutely could lose to Texas. I mean, that's not crazy at all. It's a rivalry game. Texas has been playing better, although they didn't look great against Georgia. That's one that could happen. Georgia's done, so they're going to have one loss. So that eliminates a 2-loss team. So Texas, Oklahoma, Vandy, they cannot get in the SEC championship, but they still could all be in the college football playoff. Texas, I think, is going to be tough with 3 losses, but if they beat Texas A&M and they get a little help, they could still be there. Oklahoma still has a couple of tough games left. Vandy has to play Tennessee, but you look at those top 4, again, the teams that are still alive. Ole Miss has to play on the road in the Egg Bowl. Alabama has to play on the road in Jordan-Hare in the Iron Bowl. Both of those teams could lose. I mean, seriously, Texas A&M, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Alabama could all lose on rivalry week. Georgia, they play a Georgia Tech team that's been up and down, but they're going to fight. It's a rivalry game. That's one that could be very interesting as well. I'll go ahead and give you probably one of my expectations for that week. I'll probably say that one of those 4 teams is going to lose, because I do think one of them will lose. And again, the door is open for teams like Vanderbilt to possibly get in the playoff. Alabama could get knocked out if they lose to Auburn. What happens to Ole Miss if they lose to Mississippi State? I think they're probably still in, but there's going to be, and this is the great thing about the 12-team playoff, because if we had a 4-team playoff and you went into a rivalry week, Texas A&M, maybe Georgia, maybe Alabama, those games would still matter for the playoff race. Well, I guess, even Ole Miss would. But even like Texas still alive. Oklahoma, those games for them, they're going to matter. Vanderbilt, Tennessee would not matter in a 4-team playoff. That is a massive game with a 12-team playoff, because Vandy can still find their way in if they win that game potentially. So that's the good news. The good part about the 12-team playoff is it means that a lot of these games that would not have mattered, now they matter in terms of the playoff race and the national championship picture. And we're going to see, I mean, this is going to be, I think, the best rivalry weekend for the SEC, maybe in the history of college football. It's going to be really fun. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe all the favorites win and it's boring, but it doesn't feel like it's going to go that way. All right, Big Ten could get 5 teams in the college football playoff, or maybe they only get 2. And let's go back because this video is actually takeaway. So let's kind of quickly talk about it. We talked about Texas A&M coming from behind. Georgia looked really impressive against Texas. Ole Miss fought their way back, took care of business against Florida. Alabama is the team that, I said this last week. I changed my prediction on them because I said I think they're probably going to lose another game because they can't run the football, and it felt like they were going to get beat. So that one didn't really surprise me too much. But Georgia's really the team that is putting it together. Their last two games have been very impressive. And Oklahoma is a team that looks like a playoff team. So, again, this SEC race is going to be fun. Not just the race to the SEC championship, but also the race to the college football playoff. All right, now to the Big Ten. The Big Ten could get 5 teams in the college football playoff, or they could only get 2 because there are a couple of different scenarios that could play out here. Indiana, Ohio State took care of business this past week. USC beating Iowa, that was really good for the Big Ten in terms of possibly getting more than 3 teams in the playoff. Oregon, you look ahead, they play USC. So that's going to be, and Oregon actually played on Friday night. I was about to say they didn't play, but yeah, they played Friday night against Minnesota. They took care of business in that game. So USC, Oregon playing each other, that's going to be a massive game coming up this weekend. That's where game day is going to go. And in fact, they're going to Oregon for the second time. You don't really see them normally do that. It does not look like Michigan's going to be able to beat Ohio State. If you watch the games, if you watch these teams, but we thought that in the past and they've done it. So I don't know what's going to happen in that game. But Michigan, they've got to get it together. They really do. They just don't look like they're, in my opinion, like they're going to be capable of beating Ohio State. But maybe I'm wrong. But if they do, then obviously that opens the door. Then if USC beats Oregon, if Oregon doesn't drop too far and USC can move up enough, I mean, you could seriously see all 5 of these teams get in, but I think they would need some help. Like if Michigan, what if it comes down to Michigan and Oklahoma, and they're both 10-2? Oklahoma beat Michigan, so I mean, it's not a guarantee if it plays out that way that all 5 of these teams are going to get in, but there's at least a chance. Now, on the other hand, let's say that Oregon loses to USC. And Michigan loses to Ohio State, and then USC trips up in their final game, or maybe they just don't move up enough in the rankings. Maybe Oregon loses to Washington. Maybe Oregon beats USC, but then they lose to Washington, and the committee drops them. Like, there is a real scenario where only Indiana and Ohio State get in the college football playoff. I think those teams are locked in, but they're the only 2 teams that you feel really good about. Now, if Oregon wins out, they're going to be in. You just wonder if Oregon loses, how much will they drop? So, it's really interesting with the Big Ten potentially getting 2 teams in, 3 teams in, 4 teams in, or even 5. And the SEC is kind of in the same scenario. I think they at least do get 3, but yeah, it's going to be a fun race here in the Big Ten to see who makes the playoff. And again, if you're wanting to get 5 teams in, the scenario for that to happen, USC beats Oregon. Oregon blows out Washington. They look really good. Michigan beats Ohio State. That's your path. Again, might need a little bit of help, but that's your path to possibly get 5 teams in. All right, let's go to the ACC now. The ACC is down to 4. Georgia Tech, Virginia, Pittsburgh, SMU, but whoever wins the ACC is going to get blown out in the college football playoff. I mean, this conference is just not very good. You look at Georgia Tech, they struggled against Boston. Boston College is not a good football team. Georgia Tech struggled in that game, had to come from behind to win. Virginia looked good against Duke, but, I mean, how good is Virginia really? Pittsburgh really couldn't compete with Notre Dame, so if they're the team, it just tells us they're not going to be able to compete with one of these playoff teams. SMU maybe has potential, but you go back and look at what they did in the non-conference. They lost their 2 games to Power 4 competition, and those are not playoff teams. So it just doesn't feel like any of these teams will really be able to compete. Miami looked very impressive against NC State. This is the one team that I think if they got in, they have the potential, they have the talent to possibly compete in a playoff game. But I don't know if they're going to be able to move up enough to get in. I mean, especially with Oklahoma beating Alabama, that's one of those teams where if you're Miami, you hope Oklahoma loses and you can jump up there. Now you're hoping for Auburn to beat Alabama so you could jump them. There is still a path for Miami, but it's going to be tough. And Duke, Duke's just not, they're not going to be in this conversation. I don't know if there's a scenario where Miami could still get in the ACC championship. I suppose if Georgia Tech loses to Pittsburgh, and then Miami beats Pittsburgh, Louisville beats SMU, Virginia maybe doesn't even have to lose another game. So there is a scenario where Miami could get in. they're going to need a lot of help. But that'll be very interesting to see. And then you also have potentially the tiebreaker scenarios where Miami lost to Louisville and SMU. So Louisville beating us, like, it's, I don't know what would happen if we could get chaos in the ACC, but it feels like those top 4 teams, they've got enough. They should be able to get there because Georgia Tech and Pitt, if Georgia Tech wins that game, they're going to be there. Virginia, if they win their final game, they're going to be there. So it's very interesting to see the possibility of a Miami getting in. And I know fans probably, if you want good quality games in the playoff, you're probably rooting for Miami to somehow get there and get to the playoff because I think they can compete, like I said. I just don't think any of these other teams will have much of a shot. That's my takeaway based off of what we've seen. And then how about in the Big 12? Texas Tech, BYU rematch looking more likely. Texas Tech continues to dominate. We have to start really looking at this team, I think, as a potential national championship caliber team. This is a really good football team. They just continue to impress. BYU, very impressive in their game. Cincinnati losing. You feel like BYU, if they put it together, they should be able to win that game. And it just feels more likely that we're going to see Texas Tech BYU in a rematch. And if the game's competitive, is that enough for BYU to get in the playoff? We'll see. You've also got Utah lingering back there with just 2 losses. So that'll be a really interesting debate there. And then finally, in the group of 5, it feels like it's Tulane or James Madison for that final spot. Tulane, if they win the American, they finish with 2 losses, I think they're going to get there. If they trip up, though, like if it's a 1-loss James Madison versus a 3-loss East Carolina or whatever, I think James Madison gets in. So it feels like it's probably going to be one of these 2 teams. Now, of course, we could still see James Madison lose, and we could see Tulane lose, and maybe a team like Navy gets there or something. But it feels like it's more than likely going to be one of these 2 teams for that group of 5 spot. And I'm really interested to see if either one of these teams, or maybe even both of these teams, will be ranked this week when the new rankings come out. So those are my 5 takeaways from Week 12. A very exciting weekend. I think Week 13 a little bit slower, the calm before the storm, because I think that our final weekend of the regular season is going to be crazy in college football, and I can't wait for that weekend. But again, don't wish it away. We want to enjoy next weekend as well, because this college football season, of course, is going by quickly. Give me your takeaways from Week 12 down in the comments below.